They said Grandpa would have wanted it this way. That sentence has haunted me ever since. It wasn't said with warmth. It wasn't about honoring him. It was a weapon, quiet, sharp, cloaked in the kind of smiles people wear when they're about to gut you. I used to sit at his feet on Sunday afternoons, while he sipped lukewarm coffee and peeled apples with his old pocket knife. He had this laugh, soft but certain, that always made me feel like the world outside couldn't touch us. Those afternoons were quiet, safe. No one interrupted us. No lies lived there. Now, I was back in that same living room, but the air felt different. Too still. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The carpet was the same faded green. The mantel still held Grandma's porcelain owl. But the people in the room? They weren't family. Not really. Not today. My older sister, Claire, sat in Grandpa's recliner like she owned the air around her. Her blazer was too tight, her voice too bright. "We just thought it'd be best if you didn't have to worry about the inheritance," she said, sliding a stack of papers across the coffee table. "It's a lot to manage, you know? Grandpa wouldn't want you stressed." Dad nodded, eyes low. Mom looked away. I glanced down at the documents. Legal. Final. My name printed neatly below a signature line. Claire had already signed hers, bold and swooping, like she'd practiced. "What's the rush?" I asked, but my voice barely made it past my throat. Claire smiled like a teacher correcting a slow student. "Come on, Maddie. Don't be dramatic. Grandpa loved all of us equally. Why cause drama now?" I didn't want to sign. I felt it in my gut, something wasn't right. But no one was looking at me. Not really. They were watching a box they'd already wrapped me into. I reached for the pen anyway. Because silence is what I was taught. Because peace is what they said we needed. Because that's what love is, right? Giving up what you want to keep people happy? As I pressed the pen to paper, a memory struck me like a slap. Grandpa, leaning over me in the garage, wiping dirt off my scraped knee after Claire had pushed me. "Don't ever let them decide your worth," he whispered then. "You hear me? Not even family." And yet, I signed. That night, the house didn't feel like home anymore. I stayed in the guest room, the one with the old clock that ticks too loud. I couldn't sleep. Every creak felt like the house groaning in disappointment. I stepped out to get some water and passed by Claire's room. The door was cracked just enough. Her voice was low, hurried. "No, tonight," she whispered. "He said he'd bring the truck around back." I stopped breathing. My feet wanted to run, but I stayed. By morning, the safe in Grandpa's study was gone. That massive, ugly old thing, anchored to the floor for decades, vanished. When I asked Dad, he didn't blink. "Just full of old coins," he said. "Not worth the space." But Grandpa never let anyone touch that safe. Not even Claire. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't just about inheritance. Something else was buried deeper. Maybe Grandpa had left something inside it. Something meant for me. Maybe that signature wasn't just about money. Maybe they needed it to clear their tracks. I sat on the edge of the bed, fingers trembling. Had I just signed away more than a house? More than a name? I didn't feel betrayed, I felt stupid. Played. I walked outside later that day, needing air. Grandpa's garden hadn't changed much. Weeds in the same spots. Soil still smelled like summer. I knelt by the old stone path, brushing aside a loose rock. Just habit. Just something to do with my hands. And there it was. An envelope. Yellowed. Sealed. My name scrawled in Grandpa's handwriting. If you're reading this, then they got to you first. But don't worry. I left a friend behind. Ask for Lorenzo. Lorenzo? I clutched the letter tight. Heart pounding. I didn't know who Lorenzo was yet, but someone else did. And they were already looking for me. I woke up clutching the envelope like it might disappear if I let go. Grandpa's handwriting burned into my mind. If you're reading this, then they got to you first. The room was quiet, but inside, everything screamed. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled like bacon, coffee, and pretending. Claire was all smiles, acting like yesterday had been a family picnic, not a takedown. Dad asked if I wanted toast. Mom hummed while she stirred the eggs. I sat, silent. Watching. Rewinding every word of Grandpa's note. Ask for Lorenzo. Claire caught my eye across the table. She tilted her head and grinned like a cat that had already eaten. I excused myself before I lost my grip. Upstairs, I locked the bedroom door and opened the envelope again, checking for anything I missed. And there it was, folded inside, barely noticeable, an old receipt. Storage unit. Handwritten name, Richard C. Weston. Grandpa. By noon, I was standing in front of a chain-link gate in a half-dead industrial park, where paint peeled like old scabs and the air tasted like steel. I showed the receipt and my ID to the clerk, an old guy with nicotine-stained fingers who didn't ask questions. Been years since anyone touched that one, he said, squinting at the paper. The unit creaked open like a secret that didn't want to be remembered. Dust floated like ghosts in the light. Boxes stacked neatly once, now scattered like a storm had rolled through. Someone had been here, and they weren't gentle. Files dumped. Photos torn. Shelves overturned. Whatever had been here wasn't anymore. Except one thing. A small velvet pouch had fallen behind a metal cabinet, nearly invisible. I picked it up and loosened the drawstring. Inside was a gold keychain. Heavy. Carved with a wolf's head. Its eyes were black stones, glinting even in the dim. On the back, LL. That name echoed in my mind. Lorenzo. Was this his? I stepped out, trying to breathe past the tightness in my chest. The clerk glanced up. You related to Old Weston? He asked. I nodded. He used to come by with a fella. Real quiet guy. Italian maybe. Always wore leather gloves. Think his name was Lorenzo. I left a note with the clerk. If Lorenzo ever comes back, I wrote, tell him Maddie's looking for him. Driving back, I gripped the keychain in my hand. The wolf stared back like it knew something. I thought about how quickly they pushed me to sign. How Claire smiled like it was all part of a script. What were they hiding? The driveway was full when I returned. Cars lined up like nothing happened. I stepped quietly through the front door, headed for the stairs, but paused. Voices. From the dining room. You should have made sure the unit was cleared out, my mother hissed. She doesn't suspect anything. Yet, Claire replied. Their voices dropped to whispers as I backed away. My hands shook, but not with fear. A memory flashed, me, 6 years old, during a thunderstorm. Grandpa holding my hand in the hallway while the windows rattled. People can lie with words, he said, but never with fear. And just like that, I knew, I wasn't scared of them anymore. I sat in my car until the sun dipped low. The keychain hung from my fingers. I stared at it like it might bark out the truth. Who was Lorenzo? Why the wolf? Maybe mafia. Maybe something else. Whatever it was, Grandpa trusted him enough to send me his way. I pulled out my notebook and started writing. Every lie, every look, every missing item. Names. Phrases. Gut feelings. I had no plan, but I had a beginning. I won't let Grandpa's legacy vanish in silence, I whispered, and meant it. That night, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I answered. Silence. Then, low, rough, almost like gravel scraping pavement, you should stop asking about Lorenzo. Click. They meant it as a threat. But they should have known something by now. I don't scare that easy anymore. The phone call lingered like a warning bell I didn't answer. I sat in the car outside the estate, engine off, night wrapping gently around the garden. I replayed the voice, you should stop asking about Lorenzo. It was a threat. But something changed inside me when I heard it. I stopped being frightened. Back inside, the house felt different. Claire's laugh echoed too loud. Mom's fingers drummed on the table when they thought I wasn't looking. I caught Dad shrinking into the background, not smiling like he used to. I realized the pleasant facade was cracking, and I hadn't even begun to dig. When the keychain's wolf stared at me from the glove box, I asked aloud, what did I sign away? To whom were they handing it over? That question grew heavy in my mind. I found myself watching Claire's new car parked too often in the garage at odd hours, noting her bags, even her perfume, had changed. Something else was shifting. One moment stayed in my memory clearly. Last Thanksgiving, the sun had set early, and I walked past the kitchen where Claire slipped out the back door. I followed at a distance and found her with a man I didn't know, silver watch glinting under streetlights, the same wolf emblem on his cuff. Grandpa found me afterwards in the hallway and whispered, some wolves don't hunt alone. At the time I dismissed it, just Grandpa's ramblings. Now it felt like he left me a code. I spent the afternoon searching Grandpa's old study for answers. I pushed aside folders I'd never cared about and opened drawers I'd never touched. In the back of one, I found a burner phone. 2 numbers only. One labeled L. I tapped the screen. It was password locked but full of fragments, transfer finalization, no witnesses, timestamps that aligned with Grandpa's hospitalization week. I crouched on the carpet with the phone and the golden wolf keychain in one hand, breathing shallow and slow. I copied the messages onto my laptop and returned the device exactly as I found it, hid it, locked the drawer again. That evening I sat in the living room, journal open, light low. I cross-checked the number, led to a shell corporation in New Jersey. I scribbled names, phrases, unfinished thoughts. I kept thinking, did they want the money, or was there something darker? The silence around me felt louder. Mom and Dad weren't asking how I was. Claire was smiling like she'd already won. I felt the shift from being ignored to being watched, like a chess piece moved across a board. I fought 2 sides of me, one that wanted to stop and walk away, one that realized I already had. Grandpa once said, what's hidden in the attic will always creak at night. I felt the attic in my chest rattling. For years I'd kept quiet, weighed choices, accepted definitions made for me. This time I wasn't letting that settle. I recognized I was complicit by silence. And I wasn't okay with that anymore. When the phone buzzed again that night, I held my breath. The screen was blocked, unknown. A stop sign flashed for a split second. I answered anyway, and heard the same voice from before. Lower. Closer. You should stop asking about Lorenzo. Then the line went dead. And in that moment, I decided, if they made me sign, they knew I was dangerous when I awakened. They underestimated me one last time. I stepped out of the car and felt the cold night air hit me like a reminder. Grandpa's home, once a place where I could laugh freely, hide away, breathe easy, had become a stage. Valets in crisp jackets opened doors for Claire's limousine while I walked past them quietly. My heels clicked on the stone courtyard, but inside, my heart slowed. The lights felt too bright, the silence too loud. Mom and Dad greeted me with stiff kisses on the cheek. Claire stood under the spotlight, looking flawless, like she'd been born for this moment. When I glanced at the seating chart tacked by the door, my breath stalled. Support staff, it said, under a gold-embossed card. Right next to family heir sat Felicity's seat. I swallowed. Grandpa's words floated back. The family table isn't fixed, it's earned. Tonight, the tables were rearranged without asking me. In the hall beyond the cocktails and chattering guests, I walked away. I wandered through dim corridors, the mansion's grandeur coated in quiet arrogance. Camera crews moved vintage sofas, spotlights aimed at antique lamps, crew members whispered about the Meriden legacy photo shoot. Twist appeared when I realized how the house had shifted. Grandpa's old study, the place I once shared stories with him, now boxed and tagged for a brand campaign. The photographer adjusted the sofa where I used to sit with Grandpa. The velvet cushions remembered. I stood back, unnoticed in shadow, while Claire posed alongside investors and family friends. One guest leaned sideways and murmured, "So the sister really got the title, huh?" My stomach dropped. My memories were on display, and I was nowhere in them. Then, the host called Claire to the stage. "Please join us as the next generation custodian of the Meriden family estate." Applause bloomed. I patted my hands mechanically. Each clap felt like recognition of someone else's victory. Claire glanced at me, smirk, brief, then gone. The word pity hovered in my mind, but I refused to believe I deserved it. Grandpa used to say, "You never want to be the one they feel sorry for." I told myself then, silently, I won't be pity's trophy. I slipped into the garden behind the mansion. Moonlight caught the edges of oak leaves, and I could hear the gala inside like a distant party. The safe, missing since Chapter 1, the keychain found in Chapter 2, they were pieces now forming a pattern. I whispered, "Power isn't given, it's taken, and I'm done waiting." The laughter and champagne bubbles echoed behind me. I didn't turn back. Inside, I found Claire's handbag near the buffet, left unlocked. In it, sealed envelopes stamped "Confidential, Meriden Asset Transfer." My pulse leapt. Evidence. My heart raced. I slipped one into my clutch. The elevator ride upstairs felt like the slowest loop of a spinning floor. My hands were steady though. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was calculating. I thought, I will no longer be the side actor in my own story. Mom asked me to give the toast. I raised my glass quietly. My phone buzzed. A message, "We saw you in the garden. Stop digging or you'll dig the grave you're standing on." I swallowed hard. The applause filled the room. I was surrounded, yet alone. They thought the gala made me invisible. They were wrong, they just lit the spotlight I'd been carrying all along. The air outside was heavier than it had been all evening. The gala still echoed behind me, laughter bleeding through the stone walls, but I needed space. That text hadn't been empty, it carried something colder than threat. It carried intent. I was barely 5 steps into the garden when I heard her voice. "You think the spotlight is your enemy, Venus?" I turned, and there she was, my mother. Drink in hand. Gown perfect. Face unreadable. She didn't approach like a mother comforting her child. She moved like someone issuing a warning. Her heels stopped just shy of the gravel, her tone even. Don't be the kind of daughter who burns bridges and calls it justice. I didn't answer. She took a slow sip. You keep digging, you're no longer part of this family. That cut deeper than any lie ever had. I wanted to scream. To ask her what kind of mother threatens exile because her daughter wants answers. But I didn't. I stood there, stunned. Not weak, just stunned by how calmly she dropped the blade. She walked back inside without looking back. And something in me went quiet. The party thinned by midnight. I moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding eyes, dodging rooms that still smelled like my childhood. My old room was left mostly untouched. A museum piece nobody visited. I sat on the bed. That's when I noticed it. The closet door, always jammed, now opened smooth like butter. Inside, a box. Small. Wooden. My name carved in the corner, barely visible unless you squinted. I lifted the lid and found a scarf I hadn't seen since I was 14. Beneath it, an old tape recorder. Dusty. Scratched. But intact. Out of instinct, I pressed play. No static. Just breath. Then his voice. My sweet girl, if you're hearing this, I've already lost the fight I couldn't talk about. I sat still. Like the whole room was holding its breath with me. I made a deal, Venus. With men who don't leave trails. I thought I could protect you from it, but I underestimated how close they'd want to get. I should have told you sooner, but they wouldn't let me. He paused. I could hear how tired he sounded. Not old. Tired. Lorenzo. That name, he once saved my life. There's a safeguard, only he can unlock it. I left you pieces. They tried to burn the rest. He laughed, once. Hollow. If you're digging now, be smart. Don't trust anyone under this roof. I hit rewind. Played it again. And again. His voice started to echo in my chest, sinking with every memory I ever had of him. Birthday cards. Quiet car rides. Warnings I once chalked up to old age. They weren't fiction. They were forecasts. I sat on the floor, legs folded, recorder in hand. This wasn't about money anymore. Or property. Or status. It was legacy. Blood-inked agreements. Debts carried in silence. And maybe, just maybe, someone in this family decided Grandpa wasn't worth the risk anymore. I couldn't prove it yet. But for the first time, I knew what to look for. I took my burner phone. The same one I'd used to copy the files. I texted the number that had warned me earlier. I know who Lorenzo is. Let him find me. No response. But something invisible stirred, like a web being touched at its edge. I grabbed the flash drive, the tape recorder, the confidential envelope from the gala. Packed them into my old backpack. Slipped through the hallway like I used to when sneaking in past curfew. Only this time, I wasn't running from anything. I was running to something. I passed by Dad's office. His old keys still hung behind the coat rack. I took them without guilt. If they cut me from the family, I whispered, they cut me free. I didn't even shut the door behind me. Just walked into the night. Down the driveway, past the rose hedges, near the gate, headlights. A black car slowed. The back window rolled down, just enough. A man's voice, deep, calm, laced with something old world. Miss Meriden, I believe you've been asking about me. I didn't flinch. I stepped toward the car. For the first time, I wasn't chasing answers, they were chasing me. I hadn't planned to go back into the study that night. But something about that last conversation, the car, the voice. It lit a fuse I couldn't put out. I moved through the house like I didn't belong there anymore, not with their laughter still hanging in the air, not with the walls pretending they hadn't heard the truth. The study was dim, a single lamp glowing beside the leather chair Grandpa used to sit in. Dust floated where sunlight should have been. I didn't touch anything at first, just stood there, breathing him in. Then I saw the drawer. Half open. Almost like it was waiting. Inside, a manila envelope. No markings, except my name, written in his unmistakable hand, for Venus only. I opened it slowly, like it might break. The recorder I found earlier was inside. Alongside it, something new. A flash drive. Plain. But labeled, Proof, RM. My hands weren't steady. I slid the drive into the old desktop tower. The screen flickered. Then came his voice again. They got to it before I could speak. I thought I had more time. I sat down. The room felt smaller. Like the walls were closing in. Headphones on, I listened. He named them. Knox. Celine. Said they pressured him to sign over assets through a trust he never built. A shell company was created, using the family estate as leverage. The payout? Split, if he died on schedule. He said my sister's name, too. Not in anger. In regret. I thought she'd grow into the role, he said. But I was wrong. She's not strong, she's compliant. That's what they wanted. I paused the recording. Rewound it. Played it again. That line stayed with me. Compliant. A sudden click behind me, quiet but sharp. I froze. A camera. Someone had triggered it. I didn't turn around. I shut the screen. Pulled the drive. Voices from the second recording filtered through the headphones before I ripped them off. She's next if she doesn't behave. The safe. The wolf keychain. The burner phone. It all tied together. Outside the study window, a car's headlights swept across the lawn. Then a click. The driveway gate locked. They knew. I grabbed the envelope. Stuffed the recorder inside my coat. Slipped through the study's side exit. They weren't just erasing me, I whispered as I moved through the hedges. They were erasing him. By sunrise, the video was everywhere. A clip, me signing documents. Clearly nervous. Clearly under pressure. My sister posted it on our brand's official page. Transparent succession, she captioned. No coercion. The comments were brutal. She looks fine to me. Just jealous. Drama for attention. I felt naked. Hung out in public with no context, no protection. But something cracked open in me. Fine. You want a show? I'll give you the full reel. I called Dante. I told him I needed encryption, press support, and a firewall that wouldn't melt under pressure. He didn't ask why. Just said, where do I send the paperwork? I gathered the documents. I printed Grandpa's trust. Highlighted forged signatures. Made copies of the files. Uploaded them to 2 clouds and burned backup drives. My hands moved without needing thought. This was no longer about hurt feelings. This was war. I sat in Grandpa's garden, just as the light broke over the trees. Birds started their songs like nothing had changed. But everything had. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Choose now, silence or storm. I stood. The envelope lay beside me on the bench. I opened it, half expecting more paper. Just one photograph. A wolf keychain. And an address. Camden, New Jersey. I looked at the sunrise. No fear. Just decision. They sent me a warning, and I answered by packing the bomb. Now they'll decide if I detonate it. I arrived at the federal courthouse in Philadelphia just before 8. The marble steps were cold under my heels, the morning air smelled of damp stone and history. Inside, I walked with a straight back though my heart felt like it wanted to sprint. My folder pressed flat against my side, recorder, flash drive, the transcripts all aligned like soldiers. Across from me sat Dad, Mom and Claire, side by side, faces too put together, like they were already in victory mode. The clerk's voice echoed through the chamber, Jeremiah Meriden estate case, plaintiff, Victoria Meriden. Grandpa's words came back to me clearly, when you're right, find the courage to take the stand. And here I was. The defense lawyer took the floor with polished confidence. Your Honor, he began, this transfer was voluntary, executed with full consent and clear mind. I listened while my lawyer stood and unveiled the pile I had built, burner phone logs, the wolf insignia keychain, the ledger that proved the safe's contents had supernatural value to someone. Every eye in the courtroom flicked to the items laid bare. I sat quiet and watched Claire's face stiffen. In my mind I thought, I am heard now. The pace picked up. Objections, whispering counsel, clacks of heels. My body tingled, not with fear but with tension riding high. Then the surprise witness walked in. Thomas Reed, Grandpa's lawyer for decades, asked to approach the stand. The air changed. He told the court how Grandpa had signed instructions to safeguard one envelope, one recorder, one drive, until the day she chose to speak. He laid bare how the Shell Corporation was established, how Felicity and Dad were signatories without true awareness. I felt vindication warm my chest slowly. Claire glanced toward Dad. She swallowed. The defense lawyer's face shifted, shadows under his calm. Justice isn't loud, it's persistent, I reminded myself, quietly. When it was my turn, I rose. I placed the recorder on the stand and pressed play. Grandpa's voice filled the room, soft but firm. The transfer was forced. A deal made to protect the family, but it cost me everything. I explained how they pressured him, how the safe was cracked, how I signed blind. The judge leaned forward. Knox rose, stammering a request for recess. My voice didn't falter. It was composed, steady, after years of being invisible. I thought, I am not erased. Felicity stepped up then, attempting to flip the script. I'm emotional because I was wronged, she said, raising a document that claimed I waived all claims willingly. The courtroom erupted in tension, objections, sidebars, counsel crosstalk. My pulse thudded, but I recognized the move. They were using my humanity against me. I slid my gaze to Dad, he looked away. Inside I muttered, they've thrown their final blow, now I land mine. The judge called for recess. I exited into the corridor, sunlight hitting me like a spotlight I hadn't asked for. I checked my phone, a message from Dante, they know you found it. Expect movement tonight. My sister and parents left together, staged in calm. Across the lawn the black car waited. The same car I'd seen outside the estate. I inhaled deep, steadying myself. Today the court heard my truth. Tonight, the real game begins. Walking back into that courtroom felt different this time. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't uncertain. Dante Corvelli walked 3 steps behind me. Sharp suit, colder eyes. He didn't need to speak, his presence did enough. The room shifted the moment he stepped in. People recognized him. Not from news articles, no, it was something older. Reputation. Fear. History. I took my seat. Judge called the session to order. My hands rested on the desk, steady. Felicity caught sight of Dante and stiffened. Knox's smile turned into something tight and nervous. I thought about Grandpa's voice one last time before this all unraveled. When the wolves show their teeth, you either learn to lead the pack or step aside. I wasn't stepping aside. My lawyer rose and presented the document. Amendment to Grandpa's trust. Official. Notarized. Signed the day before he died. Nullifying Felicity's claim. Declaring the transfer of ownership illegitimate and coercive. The judge's brow furrowed. Defense stammered, objected. The judge overruled. I hit play on the recorder again. Grandpa's voice cut through the air like a blade. They forced my hand. I tried to protect her. I looked across the courtroom as my sister's face went pale. Knox muttered something under his breath. I leaned back slightly and let it play. The room wasn't quiet, it was stunned. My silence wasn't passive anymore, it was the calm before the strike. They weren't prepared for the force of what I'd brought. I didn't need to scream. The truth did that for me. Once we stepped out, the press was already waiting. I didn't hide. I walked straight into the camera lights, adjusted the mic. My name is Victoria Meriden, I said. And I'm not here to reclaim something stolen, I'm here to give it away. I announced the Parker Library. Grandpa's name, repurposed. The estate would be turned into a public center, education, research, community support. This isn't about inheritance anymore. This is about legacy. Shared. Not hoarded. Some clapped. Some whispered. My family stood behind the crowd, frozen in place. This wasn't a loss for them. This was an extinction event. And they didn't even know how to process it. That night, I returned to the estate. Didn't even get a full breath before Felicity stormed into the foyer. You think you won? She barked. You don't even know what you stepped into. I didn't flinch. Knox stepped out of the hallway behind her. You made us look weak, he said. Publicly. That doesn't go unanswered. I smiled. Calm. Measured. You signed a contract you thought you buried. Grandpa made sure I knew how to read every line. I lifted my hand slightly. The wolf keychain dangled between my fingers. Their eyes followed it like it was loaded. I knew then, they understood. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was control. And they'd lost it. Morning came quiet and golden. I walked the garden path, same place I once sat feeling like the leftover daughter. Now, volunteers lined the grass. Murals of Grandpa being sketched across brick. Bookcases lifted in. Kids arriving with their parents to help. The estate was becoming something it was never allowed to be: open. Useful. Alive. I stood there and whispered to myself, I didn't keep what they took. I rebuilt it for everyone else. My phone buzzed. Message from Dante, welcome to your legacy. I looked toward the gate. Felicity was leaving in silence. No final words. No grand exit. Just a car pulling away with a woman who used to believe silence was power. Now she had nothing left to say. Later, I stood on the terrace alone. I opened the envelope Grandpa had left for me. Inside, a single folded note. One sentence in his handwriting: the wolf outlived the pack because he chose his direction. I stared east. Toward the next fight. Toward every place they said I wouldn't reach. They thought we were finished playing, but we were just choosing the board. The wind carried the faint rustle of applause through the garden as the ribbon fell. I stood there, scissors still in hand, watching the Parker Library come to life. The sign above the door wasn't gold, wasn't flashy. It was simple wood, carved with care. People smiled as they walked inside. A few paused to take it in. Some probably didn't even know who I was. That was fine. This was never about recognition. I wandered inside slowly. The grand hallway once used for dinners where words cut sharper than knives, now filled with shelves of books and local volunteers handing out flyers for literacy programs. Children's voices echoed where silence used to suffocate. Near the back, an old photo of Grandpa and me stood framed beside the mural of his favorite quote. I ran my fingers along the edge of a reading table, the same wood once used for closed-door family meetings. I whispered to myself, maybe healing isn't about rewriting what happened, maybe it's just about making sure it lands different next time. The pain didn't vanish. But the house wasn't holding it anymore. I was adjusting the mic for my speech when I saw her, Felicity. Standing alone under the oak. No knocks. No lawyers. No smugness. Just her and that hollow weight she'd been dragging behind her since the courtroom. She caught my eye, walked up slow, hands trembling slightly. I stepped aside from the mic and nodded. "Can we talk?" she asked. We walked a few paces away from the crowd. Her voice cracked before she even said a word. "I didn't think I had a choice, Vic," she began. Back then, everything felt like it had already been decided. Mom made it clear, go along or get left behind. She exhaled sharply. "But you always had fight in you." I didn't. Then it came, the truth. She admitted Knox pressured her. That our mother played quiet chess from the background, threatening to cut her out, emotionally and financially. I knew it was wrong. "I just didn't want to lose everything," she said, looking down at the ground. Part of me wanted to lash out. But something inside just deflated. Not in surrender, but in recognition. She wasn't the architect, she was just another cog. Bent, not broken. I didn't tell her I forgave her. I didn't lie to make her feel better. I just said, "You don't owe me an apology, you owe yourself an ending." She blinked at that. Then nodded, once. No tearful hug. No forced closure. She turned and walked back through the garden, lighter somehow. I stood still, hands in my coat pocket, watching her disappear into the crowd. Inside the estate, I found myself wandering again. Toward the old study. Same drawer where I first found a recorder. Tucked beneath some books, I found a sealed letter. My name, written in Grandpa's careful hand. The note was short: "If they bury the truth, plant something there anyway." That was it. 7 words. But it felt like someone dropped a warm stone in my chest. I framed that note, placed it by the library entrance. People stopped. Read. Moved on a little slower than before. From that point, things shifted, not perfectly, but meaningfully. One room became a grief counseling center. Another turned into a community pantry. Retired teachers offered reading classes. Kids built robots in what used to be the wine cellar. I sat down with a local reporter who asked me, "Do you think you've fulfilled your grandfather's wishes?" I didn't pause. "He left me a house," I said. "But I built a home for everyone." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it when I said it. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the tree line, I stepped out onto the balcony. A community journal sat on the table, its pages fluttering in the wind. Laughter and music rose from below. I didn't join. I just sat quietly. Let it wash over me. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One line of text: Parker's secrets weren't just about money. Call me when you're ready. I stared at the screen. Heart didn't race. Hands didn't shake. Just quiet again. I closed the journal and looked out at the fading horizon. The past may be buried, but some roots still move under the ground.